Hello, welcome to 12 Minutes to Clat. My name is Nehil, and I'm your coach for verbalizability and critical reasoning, also known as logical reasoning. Today, we'll take a look at the types of questions logical reasoning has to throw at you. If I talk about the examination, the last year there were a lot of analytical reasoning questions as well. So it's been a match of analytical reasoning and critical reasoning. Today, we'll only focus on critical reasoning and the types of questions. Speaking of this, first, let's talk about the exam per se. The CLAT UG syllabus focuses on comprehension, reasoning, and aptitude rather than rote learning. So it's not that you have to learn something by heart, you have to understand concepts and then apply them. Okay? There are 5 sections: English language, current affairs, legal reasoning, logical reasoning, and quantitative techniques. 120 questions, 2 hours with 0.25 negative marking for each answer. Each wrong answer, that is. That's the UG syllabus. First, English language, reading comprehension, inferences, vocabulary, and grammar based on approximately 50 word passages. Current affairs, including general knowledge, I'll leave that to an expert. Legal reasoning, again, I'll leave that to an expert. And then you have logical reasoning, which is what we're going to discuss today. Over here, we identify arguments, draw conclusions, analyze patterns and analogies and other relationships, right? Today, we'll focus on this. You also have quantitative techniques, but that is something I leave to a quantitative expert, right? My area today is logical reasoning. If I talk about the key exam details, as I said, there are 120 questions, 2 hours, plus 1, minus 2.25. Medium is English. It's a pen paper based test. You get an OMR sheet, you have to mark your answers there. Okay, without further ado, let's just move on to the types of questions. Now, if I talk about critical reasoning, if I talk about the basics, what is an argument? An argument has 3 things basically: the premises, pieces of information or evidence that support the given conclusion. They can be facts, opinions, or claims. Yes. Then you have assumptions, which are unstated parts. Please mind, this is important. They are unstated parts of the argument, but they are necessary to reach the given conclusion. All right. Conclusion is the main point of the argument, something which the author is trying to prove. They are always in the form of an opinion or a claim, right? Let's take an example, a very basic example, okay? Say you want to do well in CLAT. Of course you do. On that basis, you join 12 minutes to CLAT, right? 2 things here. You want to do well in CLAT. That's a fact. That's a given. On the basis of this, what did you do? You joined 12 minutes to CLAT. आप क्लैट में अच्छा करना चाहते हैं, ठीक है. इसके बेसिस पे आपने किया क्या? ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ दिस आपने क्या डिसाइड किया? आपने डिसाइड किया कि हम 12 मिनट्स टू क्लैट ज्वाइन करते हैं. 2 things here. You want to do well in CLAT, you join 12 minutes to CLAT. Now, if I ask you, what were you thinking when you joined 12 minutes to CLAT? Your answer would be 12 minutes to CLAT will help you do well in the examination. That's exactly what you were thinking. Now, I stated only 2 things. First, the premise, you want to do well in CLAT. On the basis of this conclusion, you join 12 minutes to CLAT. Something which is unstated but necessary for the conclusion to make sense. 12 minutes to CLAT will help you do well in the examination. Get it? So it's a very simple structure if I talk about it. Guys, you'll have to excuse my drawing, please. Don't make fun of it. What I've tried to do here is make a tree. Okay? I don't know how it's come out, but let's make do with it. Let's call this tree an argument. Now, what are the 3 parts of an argument? You clearly see something. It's the trunk of the tree. It's always there. This becomes my premise, evidence, or fact. On the basis of it, I get my fruits and flowers on the top. This becomes my conclusion. And something which you do not see but is necessary for the tree to stand upright. Right? Just the way you can't see the roots, an assumption is something which is unstated. I hope this gives you some semblance. Okay, we'll learn more about this as we go further. Let's focus on what we are out to do today. Take a look at the types of questions. Basic type of question: strengthening the argument. In order to strengthen the argument, we should support the conclusion of the argument. Always support the conclusion. When we're talking about strengthening or weakening the argument, we have to strengthen the conclusion or weaken the conclusion. If you see, this is a premise, evidence, or a fact, right? Now, since something is a fact, you cannot weaken it, you cannot change it. You can only talk about the conclusion. Let's put this into perspective. Psychology expert. Few medical colleges require that students who are specializing in medicine take a course in human psychology. However, success in the medicine field requires understanding of the minds of patients. Success requires understanding of the minds of patients. Thus, to help medical students succeed in their careers, medical colleges should increase the duration of the course. Should increase duration of course in human psychology. Two things we know, right? Success in the field requires understanding of the minds. On the basis of this, we're giving a conclusion that we should increase the duration of the course in human psychology. Now we have to strengthen the argument above. Now, mind you guys, even if you state the assumption, the argument will automatically strengthen. Let's see. Mind you, few, okay? Few versus a few. There's a major difference between few and a few. Few means hardly any. Few means very little in number. A few means sufficient. So when I say few medical colleges, I'm saying very few, very less in number medical colleges do this. Okay. Option A says medical colleges require some time for studying psychology for their trainees in the past. Past. We are not concerned with the past, so we can eliminate this. B looks good, but we'll talk about B later. C says most students who are interested in psychology would take up medicine if the time for the course in psychology was increased. Guys, this says that more students would take up medicine. Are we concerned with increasing the number of students who take up medicine? No. We're concerned with the fact that students who have taken up medicine should succeed, right? Students succeed in their careers. We're not trying to increase the number of people who take up medicine. So based on that, I can eliminate this. D says some of the most prominent doctors began their career with yoga. Yoga, we're not talking about yoga. E says discussion of medicine in psychology increases concentration among psychology students. Okay, it increases concentration among psychology students, but does that tell me anything about students succeeding in their careers? No. So I can eliminate this as well. Take a look at B. If you see, B is nothing but an assumption. Studying psychology increases training's understanding of the patient's mind. And what do we need? For success, we require understanding of the of the minds. So, to succeed, we should increase duration of psychology. So, we are assuming that studying psychology increases training's understanding of the patient's mind. So, when we increase the duration of psychology, they have a better understanding of the minds of the patients and hence they are more likely to succeed. Simple. Okay, that's one type of question. Next, basic question is weaken. In order to weaken the argument, we should challenge the conclusion of the argument. As mentioned earlier, we can only strengthen or weaken the conclusion, right? Make sure that you don't challenge the fact or evidence given in the argument. Okay, let's take a look at this here. The company Indian Sports plans to boost its profits by taking local sports overseas to cities which have PIOs. PIOs is person of Indian origin. Okay. They want to introduce new games in these cities based on local Indian games that are little known there. The company reasons that since the tournaments organized by other organizers have none such games, they will have to compete for viewers and thus will be able to sell their games at a higher price. What are we saying? They want to introduce new games that are little known, right? All right. Which of the following, if true, present the most serious potential weakness of the plan? What is the plan? The plan is to introduce new games which are little known, right? A says the new games would be priced significantly higher than other tournaments in those cities. See, price, we can't say that if just because something is priced higher, it would not be sold, it would not be successful. Price does not give me any idea. If there's something new which is priced higher, I might still go for it. Just because something is priced higher does not mean that a person will not go for it. So I can eliminate this. This does not weaken the argument in any way. In a random survey, at least one of the viewers said that they preferred many of the new games to all the more familiar ones. They preferred many of the new games. If this is the case, chances are that Indian sports will be able to market the new game because they preferred new games. So this, if at all, is anything but weakening. It is in fact strengthening the argument because it is saying that the plan will be a success. Alright, so I eliminate this. To build widespread demand for the new games, Indian sports would have to launch an advertising campaign to familiarize viewers with them. This is also irrelevant. It's very similar to the first one. Okay, this A says the new games would be priced higher. C says the new games would need advertising. Nobody said that higher priced games will not sell. Nobody said that Indian sports are not willing to advertise. Okay, if this needs advertising, they'll advertise. No big deal. It in no way weakens the argument. D says viewers choosing among different games watch on the basis of knowledge and familiarization than the novelty factor. So what are viewers going for? Viewers are going for their prior knowledge and familiarization. They are not going to novelty. And what is this company doing? This is introducing new games. D tells us viewers do not prefer new games. Viewers prefer the games that they already are familiar with. They don't want novelty. So new games are likely to not succeed and thereby D is weakening the argument. Okay. E says few viewers who are loyal to a particular sport would willingly switch to another sport, the tickets of which cost more. Few viewers, again, very little number of viewers. Again, irrelevant. It's only talking about few viewers who are loyal to the particular sport. Right. So I eliminate this as well. Moving on. Next, flaw. These questions test your ability to recognize logical errors in the author's reasoning used to construct the argument. Let's take a look at the question. This is a very easy one. Quick serve sandwiches uses only cream cheese, which are lower in saturated fat than any other type of cheese, to make all its sandwiches. Since diets high in saturated fat are linked to heart disease, it can be concluded that sandwiches served by quick serve are wholesome. What are we saying? They use only cream cheese. On this basis, we are saying they are wholesome. Just because they use quick cheese, we are saying they are wholesome. Okay. What is the flaw in the argument? No information is provided about the unsaturated content of cream cheese. We are not concerned with the unsaturated content. Okay. Low in saturated fat doesn't necessarily indicate the wholesome. Yes, exactly. We are saying they are lower in saturated fat and that's why they are wholesome. If B is true, low in saturated fat does not necessarily indicate wholesomeness, then we cannot conclude that the sandwiches served by quick serve are wholesome. Why? Because it simply says they only use cream cheese, which are lower in saturated fat, and that's why they are wholesome. If I say no, low in saturated fat doesn't necessarily indicate wholesome, then I can say they are not wholesome. B is the flaw in the argument. Let's take a look at the other options as well. C says different people have different metabolic rates. Does not tell us anything about being wholesome or not. Many customers add mayonnaise to their sandwiches, which increases the fat content. Mayonnaise to their sandwiches, which increases the fat content. Again, this is a new point altogether. We are concerned with cream cheese, saturated fats, and wholesome. Mayonnaise, new point, I can eliminate this. Crispy sandwiches, quick serve's biggest competitor has followed suit and started using cream cheese to make all its sandwiches. So, probably crispy sandwiches are also wholesome. This is neither strengthening nor weakening the argument. This is just another statement which adds or takes away nothing from the argument. So I eliminate this as well. Best answer, option B. I hope this is clear. It's simple. Yes, that's all we need to do. Assumption, very, very important. Okay. You will definitely have a question or two on the assumption part of it. Assumption of the argument is not stated. We've discussed this. Not stated in the argument, but it is there in the logic of the argument. Assumption has to be true for the argument to hold. Okay. Negation test, when reversed, only the right answer choice will reverse the argument as well. For example, and it's not a fact, but if I were to say that 12 minutes to CLAT is not going to help you as far as CLAT is concerned, then joining it will not make sense. So that's the negation test. Okay. Mind you, 12 minutes to CLAT will help. Okay. This was just an example, hypothetically. Let's take a question. Surveys consistently show that the best selling toffee flavor is strawberry. Although those who prefer chocolate rarely order strawberry. Best selling toffee flavor is strawberry. Okay. Strawberry flavored cake then probably sells better than chocolate flavored cake. Strawberry flavored cake then probably sells better. I think it's a very simple question. We're saying best selling toffee flavor is strawberry. That's why strawberry flavored cake probably sells better. So what are we assuming? That the preference for toffee and the preference for cake are similar? I think you already have your answer. Which of the following is an assumption upon which the author of the argument relies? Because someone prefers strawberry toffee does not mean that he prefers strawberry flavored cake. If A is true, it is nothing but weakening the argument. If A is true, I cannot say strawberry flavored cake sells better, right? B says children who prefer strawberry toffee also tend to like chocolate cake. Okay, they also like chocolate cake. But I'm talking about strawberry flavored toffee and strawberry flavored cake. Chocolate cake. भाई लग सकता है अच्छा, जिसको स्ट्रॉबेरी पसंद है उसको चॉकलेट भी पसंद हो सकता है. No big deal there, right? But this is not an assumption required. C says those who prefer neither strawberry nor chocolate toffee also prefer other flavors. I can simply eliminate this because there's neither strawberry nor chocolate. I don't need to be bothered with this. Someone who prefers strawberry toffee may still order chocolate on occasion. Okay, they may. But that does not tell me why are we choosing strawberry flavored cake based on based on the sale of strawberry flavored toffee. So I can eliminate this as well. E says preferences for certain toffee flavors are similar to preferences for cake. That's exactly what the assumption is. है ना, इसीलिए तो हमने बोला अरे टॉफी स्ट्रॉबेरी फ्लेवर्ड टॉफी बिक रही है तो स्ट्रॉबेरी फ्लेवर्ड केक भी बिकेगा. जस्ट बिकॉज स्ट्रॉबेरी फ्लेवर्ड टॉफी इज सेलिंग, स्ट्रॉबेरी फ्लेवर्ड केक वुड ऑल्सो सेंस. Why are we saying this? Preferences are similar between toffee and cake. Clearly my answer is A. Assumption question, right? Assumption questions are a given. ये तो आएगा, you'll definitely have it in your examination. So we'll take up one more example. According to the new office smoking regulations, only employees who have enclosed office may smoke at their desks. Okay. Virtually all employees with enclosed offices are at the professional level, and virtually all secretarial employees lack enclosed offices. Therefore, secretaries who smoke should be offered enclosed offices. Please understand, the assumption will always be strengthening the conclusion. So first things first, we have to figure out what is the conclusion of the argument. The conclusion is secretaries who smoke should be offered enclosed offices. Okay. And what do we have as our premises or facts? Only employees who have enclosed office may smoke. If I consider these two things, only employees who have enclosed office may smoke. That's why secretaries who smoke should be offered enclosed offices. I think I've made this amply clear. I think you've already found what the assumption is. Which of the following is an assumption that enables the conclusion about to be properly drawn? A says employees at the professional level who do not smoke should keep their enclosed offices. This is talking about employees who do not smoke, but I'm concerned with secretaries who smoke. So I can safely ignore this. B says employees with enclosed offices should not smoke at their desks even though the new regulation permits them to do so. How does it help the conclusion which says secretaries who smoke should be offered enclosed offices? This talks about employees with enclosed offices. We're talking about secretaries who smoke. Irrelevant. C says employees at the secretarial level should be allowed to smoke at their desks even if they do not have enclosed offices. Okay. If I consider C, if C is true, then I don't need this conclusion. If they're allowed to smoke at their desks, then I should not be vouching for enclosed offices for secretaries. But what am I saying? What is the author saying rather? Secretaries who smoke should be offered enclosed offices. Okay. The author is saying this on the very basis of the fact that, yeah, because employees at the secretarial level should be allowed to smoke at the desk. If they're allowed to smoke at the desk, we don't need enclosed offices. So this is not strengthening the argument. D says the smoking regulation should allow all employees who smoke equal opportunity to do so regardless of an employee's job level. I repeat, the smoking regulation should allow all employees who smoke an equal opportunity to do so regardless of an employee's job level. Now, if this is true, then I can say that secretaries who smoke should be offered enclosed offices because only employees who have enclosed offices may smoke. So if I were to give them an equal opportunity, I will have to give secretaries also an enclosed office. Secretaries don't smoke. E says the smoking regulation should provide equal protection from any hazard associated with smoking to all employees who do not smoke. This is talking about smoking provide employees who do not smoke. We are not concerned with employees who do not smoke. We are only concerned with employees who smoke and rather secretaries who smoke. Okay, so I can eliminate this as well. Simple है, आसान है. एक बार समझ में आएगा ना. If you understand the logic, if you understand how to join the dots, you'll be able to answer these questions in no time. Okay, that's why I'm just taking you through all the types of questions today, right? Let's take a look at paradox. What is a paradox? Paradox is self-contradictory. Okay, it says in these arguments two contradictory facts will be given and the right answer choice will explain how both facts can be true at the same time. Words that indicate paradox questions are explain, resolve, justify, paradox, discrepancy, best accounts for and reconcile. Do not pick one-sided answer choices or the ones which make the conflict worse. Remember, we have to select the best possible explanation among the given answer choice. So rely on elimination. If you see, as far as elimination is concerned, I've ensured that we eliminate all the wrong answer choices right from the first question itself. We have ensured that we not only mark the right answer, we also mark the answers we also figure out which are the answers incorrect. So I'm not only marking the right answer, I'm also eliminating all the answer choices. And guys, this is the way forward as far as aptitude is concerned. This is not just the case with logical reasoning. You will do this for English language, for GK, for legal reasoning, everything. Please always follow the process of elimination. Sometimes you may not logically find the right answer. In that case, elimination will help you find it. Okay. Alright, let's take a look at the question now. Naval ships use different alarm calls to warn each other of nearby attacking ships depending on whether the danger comes from a ship on sea or from a submarine. So different alarm calls for different types of attacks. Why would they do that? If they just have to give an alarm call, one alarm call should suffice. एक ही alarm call काफी है. अलग-अलग क्यों? Which of the following, if true, contributes most to an explanation of the different alarm calls of naval ships described above? Okay. Now we have to explain. We have to give an explanation as to why the alarm calls are different in case of a ship on sea or in case of a submarine. A says, by varying the pitch of its alarm call, a naval ship can indicate the number of attacking ships approaching. Are we concerned with the number of attacking ships? No. And it's only talking about ships. We are concerned with why different calls for ships on water and submarines. B says different sea-based attacking ships are responsible for different number of ships capsizing. Again, this only talks about ships. I'm concerned with ships and submarines, different alarm calls. Okay. No attacking ships that pose a danger to naval ships can attack both from sea and under the sea. Again, this only talks about ships. We are concerned with why different alarm calls for ship and submarine. This is an easy question, guys. Okay. D says naval ships execute different strategies when confronted with sea-based attacking ship or a submarine. Now, how will they know which strategy to execute? Only if they know whether they're being attacked by a sea-based, if they're being attacked by a sea-based ship or a submarine. So, the naval ships will have to know when the alarm sounds, what are they being attacked by? Are they being attacked by a sea-based ship, or are they being attacked by a submarine? Why? Because they have different strategies. How do we notify them? By using different alarm calls. So D helps us justify why we need different alarm calls, because because they have different strategies. So they need to be aware of which strategy to use when. That's why they need to be alerted, and that's why the different alarm calls. This explains the different alarm calls, thereby my answer. E says certain sea-based attacking ships attack only naval ships, whereas every ship that attacks naval ships from under the sea attacks other commercial ships too. Right. Again, no point. This does not explain why different alarm calls. Right. Next question. Okay. I think this is the last type of question. We've covered more or less just about everything. Inference. What is an inference? An inference is something which must be true as per the passage. There's a very slight difference between inference and conclusion. Conclusion is what the author is trying to prove, or the main idea that the author is trying to drive home. Inference is anything which must be true based on the facts given to you in a paragraph or an argument or a passage. Okay? We have to find the conclusion based on the information given to us in the paragraph. You must be thinking, what can you logically conclude based on the information without adding any outside information? All right. Eliminate answer choices. We've discussed this already. That bring outside information. Okay. Let's take a look at the question now. High levels of fertilizers and pesticides needed when farmers try to produce high yield of the same crop year after year pollute water supplies. Experts therefore urge farmers to diversify their crops and to rotate their plantings yearly. Right. High levels of fertilizer and high yield of same crop pollute water supplies. Experts urge to diversify their crops and their plantings yearly. Okay. So what are we saying? If the farmers produce the same crop, high yield of it, they use high levels of fertilizer and pesticides. They don't use crop rotation, and that's why the water supply is polluted. What are the experts saying? Experts are saying, please diversify your crop and rotate your planting on a yearly basis. All right. The question: to receive governmental price support benefits from a crop, farmers must have produced that same crop for the past several years. What are we saying? To receive governmental price support, government support, they have to have produced that same crop over the past several years. See what happens here. फार्मर को गवर्नमेंट का सपोर्ट तभी मिलेगा जब वो सेम क्रॉप ओवर द इयर्स प्रोड्यूस कर रहे हैं. Experts are saying diversify the crops, but what will the farmers do? Farmers will have to go with the same crop. Why? Because they'll only use this governmental support only when they produce the same crop. The statements above, if true, best support which of the following conclusions? Let's start from the bottom. He says governmental price supports for farm products are set at levels that are not high enough to allow farmers to get out of debt. Are we concerned with debt? No. We're concerned with pollution, water pollution, and the same crop. So I eliminate this. D says new farming techniques will be developed to make it possible for farmers to reduce the application of fertilizers and pesticides. New farming techniques, we're not concerned with new farming techniques. Eliminate this as well. C says Farmers can continue to make a profit by rotating diverse crops, thus reducing costs for chemicals, but not by planting the same crop each year. Okay, but then this does not talk about the government price support benefit. I can eliminate this. B says the only solution to the problem of water pollution from fertilizers and pesticides is to take farmland out of production. Right? We're saying the only solution is to take farmland out of production. These two things, okay? This is very extreme. First of all, it says this is the only solution. Second, it says take farmland out of production. मतलब production ही खत्म ही कर दो. That's not what we're looking at. But what do we know? Government's price support benefits farmers only when they produce the same crop. And when they produce the same crop, they pollute the water supplies because they are not rotating the crop. A says the rules for governmental support. What is the rule? They have to produce the same crop for the past several years. Work against the efforts to reduce water pollution. Make sense? Because to reduce water pollution, you need crop rotation, but the government price supports only when you have the same sort of crop. So clearly, the rules for governmental support of farm prices work against efforts to reduce water pollution, right? Excuse me. So guys, I've taken you through all the types of questions as far as logical reasoning is concerned, right? We'll continue with other aspects as well. I will see you soon. I will come up with other videos as well. If you want a particular video, something that you want to focus on, please let me know. I'll be more than happy to assist you. Thank you so much.